Okay.
Good afternoon. It's Monday, March 9th. It is 5:36 p.m. We are starting our meeting of the Accountability Committee. We're going to start with a roll call. Commissioner Kincaid.
Present.
Commissioner Mason.
Present.
Commissioner Chura.
Present.
Commissioner Morita Benito. I am present. And Commissioner Judge Nelson is on his way. Are there any adjustments that people want to make to the agenda? Okay. All right. We will move to public comment. There's nobody in the public here, so we will move past public comment. And we will move to a discussion of current cases pending. So as everybody might remember, we have, I believe, 2 current cases that are complaints that are open from the community. And then we have a number of other case files that have been requested. But as of right now, we aren't fully staffed. And so we have paused our process of completing case review packages until we have, I believe, an assistant director that is in place that can help us with moving through the backlog and getting back up to date. We do, however, have one case that was the case that was brought by community member complaint by Antoine Tobert, and this was a case that we voted on in 2024, May 2024. So we our plan right now, I spoke with our executive director, is to aim for having a hearing sometime in the month of April. And we are just working to make sure that our executive director has time to get up to speed on everything and be prepared for the hearing. Once we get a little closer to the beginning of April, we will set a date and notify the officer. My goal is to provide the officer with at least 3 weeks of notice. So I will keep you guys up to date on that. And then as we get an assistant director in, we will kind of talk about the plan of moving all of the previous complaints and forward, and also reviewing the case files that have been requested to see if they need to result in an open and a vote for the committee. Are there any questions about that?
What's your official time? Communication.
No? Okay. Shelley, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, just what all that you've said is just fine.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, so the date is tentatively set for May.
Yeah, okay, for May, yeah. So I think, we can kind of expect to have that hearing in May. But then we will notify the officer in
She
April.
didn't give a date. She just said a date in May. We'll know. So we're closer to our thing.
Okay, so the second is the kind of proposal that I sent out about a pre-disciplinary review. So right now, the way that the process works is that we are waiting until disciplines are completely through the disciplinary process, whether that is through OPS or internal investigations and decisions. But for cases that are going through IA, so are not going through OPS, for cases that are going through IA, we do receive notice once the investigation is complete and the officers are being called up on a disciplinary hearing. And one thing that as you might remember, the policy committee right now is going through the corrective action policy. And one of the things that was removed from that policy by request of the division was the Fairness and Consistency Committee, which would have been made up of HR. They proposed a member of OPS and the CBC, and then members of the union and the division, Black Shield, and HPOA. And what they would have done is review discipline decisions before they were made to make recommendations for fairness and consistency. We have removed that by request of the division. It's not, so we've removed that for the request of the division. But one of the things we've also experienced in trying to review discipline is concerns about the amount of time that passes from when an officer is disciplined to when we would potentially be reviewing it. So, or also even the time between an event that happens and when we would be reviewing it. So one thing that we could do to kind of replace that fairness and consistency committee, and also to reduce some of the concern about why are we waiting until after discipline is being done before before working to try to support the fair and consistent application of discipline, and also to hopefully prevent us from having to get involved through disciplinary evidentiary hearings, would be for us to review the case files as they come up to the division. So what you have is you have IA completes an investigation, and then they put together a charge letter based on all of our a resident IA expert. They put together a charge letter that goes to the chief, and we also receive those. That says, based on our investigation, these are the charges that we are recommending. And then there was a hearing before the chief and the division representatives. They have representation from the union, and then it is at that hearing that they are able to make their case to say, hey, this is what this is additional evidence that I provide, or my additional context, or my argument against this. And then based on that, what happens in that disciplinary hearing, the chief and the public safety director make decisions about the discipline. So what we would do through this process is when we receive a charge letter for level 2 through 4 violations, we would request the case file and review what the investigation said and review the recommendations of IA. And then based on what they're recommending and what we see, we would basically make a recommendation to the chief that says, hey, notwithstanding like any additional information or evidence that gets presented by the officer, if these charges stand, this is where we see this falling in the discipline matrix, and this is about the expected discipline that we would expect to see in this kind of case. And we would then send that recommendation to the chief. So based in, I can go into more detail of like what the report that we get from the executive director would say, but we would make that recommendation to the chief of police. And it would not be binding, so the chief would not, at that point, would not be required to impose the discipline that we recommend. But we would hope that this could just provide us an ability to help steer the division in a positive direction. So yeah, I'll take any questions. Commissioner,
So
your mic.
Okay, so for clarity about the process, I know that there are a couple of different types of violation that require different accountability structures. So what we're talking about right now, are these strictly just cases that go through internal affairs? This does not involve any cases that go through like CRPB or Office of Professional Standards.
Correct, just IA cases.
Just IA cases. And so IA does all the investigating. They make the initial determination of what the charges are and what the discipline should be. No.
So they don't make a recommendation of discipline. They just say, they give the group level.
They identify the charges and then categorize them by severity.
Yeah, by where it falls.
Where it falls in the matrix. Okay. And then we would essentially review what internal affairs has already done. Obviously, we are not an investigatory body. We don't have an investigator. So we're taking their investigation, reviewing it from our point of view, but who is the we? Would that be the accountability committee?
Yeah, so the executive director will request the case file, would give us a report based on the case file that would have the officer information. We would redact all of that so that when we're discussing it and when the public, and based on the discussion and any materials, there's no identifiable information. The charge and any specifications, any known aggravating or mitigating circumstances, the range of discipline required by the discipline matrix, and any additional findings from the case review. The executive director would present that to us, and then we, as the accountability committee, would vote on a recommendation to send to the chief.
And we don't at any point cover that with our full commission, or do we just report to them at some point? So let's say we did 5 of these in a month before our full commission.
Before our full commission, man, I just realized that thing wasn't on. I'm just loud. Okay, so we would do, let's say 5 cases hypothetically before our full commission meeting. We make 5 different recommendations based on these 5 cases. Do we then report to the full commission that in accountability this month, this is what we did? 1. Then 2, the cases are all coming in at different times. So how do we ensure that we as a committee get this work done? Because it obviously can't just wait until our monthly meeting. So what's our process for?
The charge letters are generally sent like 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks in advance of the hearing. And then the chief generally doesn't actually give down the discipline for several months after the hearing. Is that your experience?
I would think,
I'm thinking if there's gonna be a criminal case involved, yes, it could take a longer time as that charges are adjudicated. I'm kind of like, I might have some reservations about,
Sure.
we're gonna wait. This is already gonna be probably in the public eye, it's gonna be out there if a person's going to court. If it's going that far, then the officer will be known anyway, but I just probably have to think about it a little bit, maybe have a few other questions answered. I think it's gonna have to go through the system before he goes up on charges. Unless they're gonna do an administrative review along with the IA, which they sometimes do, but I don't know if they have the personnel to do that. So we have to wait till everything is completed criminally, and then they would go with the division. Under Garrity, make a statement if they're to be compelled to, and we go from there. But it might be a little longer process than what we're thinking here.
Well, so, but we wouldn't do this until they've done the charge letter. And so generally, from my experience reviewing a lot of the discipline letters, is at least several months from when the hearing happens to when the chief actually hands down their discipline. And so if we request the case file as soon as we get the charge letter, and then we aim to do that review before the next accountability meeting, I think that it would be very well possible that we are doing this either definitely before the chief gives discipline, but I think often it could be done before the actual disciplinary hearing. And again, we would say that we understand that there could be additional information that is provided during the hearing that then would have the chief make a different decision than what we recommend. But it's saying that if you find these things to be substantiated, this is what we would expect the discipline to be.
Okay. I have lots of other questions in my mind, but they may not be relevant to this conversation, so I will just hold them. Yeah.
What are you, Commissioner Mason, do you have any thoughts?
No, just, when we get those, charge letters, can we date stamp?
So
I just uploaded that folder for everybody today.
Oh, you did?
Gotta hold
Say that
the
again,
button.
I updated the folder earlier, like literally about a couple hours ago. So everything that we have, this most recent should be in that folder.
And when they're coming through us via email, and so that the email is time stamping it for us as well. And so,
Legally, we should always take time, date, stamp stuff.
I guess,
So I guess my question and my concern, and this may sound very naive, so forgive me, but my question is, if we're talking about violations of conduct or, whatever an officer may have done that, very well may be criminal or whatever, I think all of these time frames just alarm me a little bit because like what is happening in the interim? So let's say, an officer is found to have done something potentially, right? Because there is a trial, there's a case, or there's a review and all that kind of stuff. Great, I get that. But what is the time frame that they get to investigate if something is true, and then the time frame that we and the public finds out that an officer has done something egregious, and then we make a determination, and then you're saying there could be another 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks,
Right.
6 months after we've looked at it and said, oh, this person probably shouldn't be a police officer anymore. But it's going to take another 6 months to figure that out. What are they doing in the interim? Are they still working on the force? Do they?
Not all of
it
them,
depends.
according on the situation.
Okay.
It's according on what they have done.
And is that something that we will know while we are doing these case reviews? What the current status of an officer is while we are reviewing?
Yeah, we should know if he's, a lot of times they'll put him, where they're not in any, capacity to deal with the public, they might put them in radio, taking reports over the phone, simple reports, things like that. Maybe at a district, just working in an office there, but, we kind of have them on ice so
okay,
that they don't have any public, contact.
this is what the TV shows refer to as desk duty. You be riding a desk for a while, is that what they're talking about? Okay, all right. I like it. Okay, no, that's just my concern, is the time frame. It seems like my concern initially, my initial question was about us slowing down the process, but it sounds like the process is going to be rather glacial no matter what we do.
Right.
Okay.
I think the thing that I know that we've expressed concern about with the evidentiary hearings is that coming in on that back end like that, like in some of the cases, I mean, we're talking about incidents from 2+ years ago, but I think part of why these cases do take so long to come to us is because there is often a lag on the front end as well, where the actual discipline isn't being given until quite some time after. And I think it really depends on some of those like really serious like use of force cases. Those officers are often placed on leave. But I mean, with some of the cases we've seen of discrimination, those officers haven't been on leave.
Right.
And so I think there are a number of situations where officers are not on leave and are still working. And I think you bring up a great point of like concern about
Well, I mean, it's reasonable to say that, obviously, because, no, stay. All right, dang, looking at me.
I guess, and again, this is abstract and may not be relevant, but I guess in my mind, when I think about the discipline part, I understand that obviously the safety director and chief of police, and they have like a lot of other things to do as well. So then it's like working in this discipline piece, which could probably be somebody's full-time job. You know what I mean? Like somebody could focus all of their attention on the review of discipline and doling out discipline if that was what they were doing every day. And we're talking about time, right? Like, why does this take so long, right? It's just one big job that like one person has to do on top of all their other big jobs. But it's like, well, what can we do potentially? And again, this is an abstract thought, but what can we do to potentially impact the expedience of discipline of certain levels? Because I guess what's so difficult about it, if it happened and it's reviewed and we see that it happened, what's the difficulty about administering the discipline?
Can you speak to, so within the division and both
Yeah, I
of you?
was gonna ask.
Yeah,
If
please.
you would just give the process.
Yeah.
from when an officer first or a complaint or a charge or whatever, the district do an initial investigation. So could you kind of let them know that process?
Yeah, if a district supervisor comes across something that he might suspect criminality,
Okay.
then he would contact internal affairs. And they might do, if it's something where the guy's, I don't know, doing something with prostitutes or something in that nature, it might take a while before they complete their investigation. And stuff like that has happened. Once they have everything in a row, with all their ducks in a row, they'll present it to the prosecutor and they'll either indict him, issue a warrant, or whatever we have to do to get him into custody. Usually he surrenders, and they have a hearing, and he's just like anybody else. He'll get a bond, and he'll be out on the street, and then it'll go through the process through the courts, and that's what could take time. You got lawyers,
Yeah.
continuance. Eventually when that's adjudicated, then they would do our internal review after they were adjudicated. One case comes to mind where the guy was he had a use of force, a deadly use of force. He's on the top of a car and he's found not guilty. So I get a call from the charging officer. Chief wants to put this guy up on charges. Well, we haven't even interviewed him yet. So, we had to interview him under Garrity and see what he had to say. Because he didn't say anything, and he took the fifth at court. So then with that, our little investigation had to go, and then eventually, he goes up for a hearing. So it could take a long time. Then actually another example is a sergeant involved with the pursuit. It's actually two sergeants. For months, they supposedly get indicted by East Cleveland, not indicted, but they're talking about charging them in East Cleveland. Finally, the one sergeant, they just said, we're not going to do anything with her. So she's fine. She returns to duty. The other sergeant, they don't give an answer either way what they're going to do. So this guy just retired, and he's been in office, desk duty, for how many years now? Because they wouldn't give him his gun back. Somebody from the command staff here in Cleveland should have had the guts to say, hey, you either, my grandmother would say, crap or get off the pot.
Yeah.
So, and they're not going to do anything. They should have given his gun back and returned him to full duty so he could work part-time and everything else. It's a grave injustice to that supervisor. He might have been guilty of some stuff with that pursuit, but, nothing, I don't think that would result in criminal activity, for sure. Just get that off my chest a little bit. But it could take time. It could take a lot of time to get everything done. If they're doing parallel investigations with no crossover, you don't want the two units like close next to each other because people are going to talk. Like inspections compared to internal affairs. So it has to be separated.
So again, this may sound a little naive, but I just want to clarify. If we're talking internal affairs, there is the suspicion of criminal activity involved.
Correct.
Okay, the suspicion.
Yes.
And it has to go through the process to determine if it is true. But anytime internal affairs is looking at it, there's the potential that an officer committed a crime.
Correct. That's their whole thing.
Charged.
Internal affairs is the criminal aspect. It'd be anything from a misdemeanor or felony. And I think they'll take it for a prosecutor review. And if the prosecutor says no, then they'll look at it administratively. They'll pass it on. They might handle it themselves, or they might give it to inspection, a different unit. But they would probably do the investigation from there under Gary themselves.
Okay. I guess I'm just thinking about discipline overall. I'm like, it doesn't all take this long. But when you're looking at something that may involve a criminal charge, it can take longer.
Right. Those I think are the extreme situations. I would think once their investigation is done and it's reviewed, and if they're not gonna charge them with the crime, then it should come down. They should be. I would think within a couple of months they should have them on the docket or the chief's items ready to go for a hearing, for a divisional hearing.
But if it's just a misconduct without criminal, that's a different process.
OPS, right?
No, if it wasn't criminal, they might have inspections do a investigation, or they might have the district. If it's not criminal, they would have the district supervisors do an investigation. guy keeps coming late or something like of that nature, or wrecks too many cars, they would complete the investigation, complete the package, and forward it up through the chain of command, and the supervisor would actually go to the hearing, charge hearing at the chief's office.
Oh,
So the cases that go to OPS are complaints that are made by the public. So we're kind of talking about internal discipline versus external, like, internally discovered misconduct versus externally discovered misconduct. So we would review the IA cases plus any other internal, like, investigations and discipline. OPS, that is complaints that are made by the public, that are investigated by OPS, and then are put in front of CPRB.
okay. So there is no crossover.
Between OPS and internal, no.
Okay. Okay.
Well, there's crossover once you get to the end of the process. That goes to the chief. Yeah.
Because it all funnels to the same place.
Correct.
But there are different silos of accountability. I was just a little bit confused on the,
No.
but I guess because all the process is taking so long, I'm like, who is responsible for each part? If that makes sense. But, okay. Thank you for indulging me.
So I think the question, because it sounds like people are potentially open to this, have some more questions, want to think about it a little bit more. Really, this, if we were to implement this process, it wouldn't start until we had an assistant director, because that is who would be working on the case reports. So we have some time, but are there, I guess I'm wondering what process do you feel like we need to go through, and what questions do you feel like we need to ask in order to make a decision about whether we want to implement a process such as this?
Just time. I think when I just mentioned, as long as if we can set up a structured enough process for this where it will make sense. You need an agenda? Where it will make sense for us to do this at our meeting and we're not missing anything in terms of, like I said, in terms of timing. Just organize and structure enough. I think it makes plenty of sense for us to do it this way. And then just create a detailed report for our colleagues, so they know what decisions we made.
Other thoughts?
Sure, just put on your union cap for a minute. Where you see this?
I kind of see it if we're giving out discipline or suggesting discipline, even before it's all through and done. I don't know how that's going to fly. I mean, it would seem like we'd all be on the same page then as the chief and whoever's going to discipline, but I don't think we're going to have the full picture. If we're not going to be at the hearing, but there might be some stuff that might come out there. We have to take into consideration that's not going to be here when we have this and we make our recommendation. I think maybe about making these recommendations also. I mean, we got the matrix, but how are we going to kind of decide? We're going to look at it and look for like aggravating and mitigating circumstances ourselves and kind of come up with something like that, or I mean that's some of the questions I have.
That's fair.
To the chair. So my thoughts on it was that, I think what I hope to get out of this process was more like what I really think is important is that the amount of time between when we make a decision and when either the chief or the safety director makes a decision, I would like that time frame to be like as small as possible. So what I was hoping is that we could get the records earlier so that we could review them earlier, so that whenever they have the hearing and we can kind of see if anything new comes out, when they actually have the disciplinary hearing. So then we would already have went through whatever was available, but then if something new comes out of the hearing, then it's just one last thing or things that we need to review before we decide if we like agree or not. So I would just, I think that's the whole goal here. The goal is to not have an officer get disciplined and then have them have to wait another 6 months or 5 months or whatever to hear what our decision will be. So I would assume that we would have to wait until they have the disciplinary hearing because something additional could come out. But at least at that point, we would be prepared to have already reviewed what was available to hear what else comes out. And that should help us to make a decision a little bit quicker in a way that's more timely and I think more fair to the officer.
I think the only issue with that, is that we would not, the way we get information about the hearing is through the chief's decision letter. Like, we're not a party to the hearing, we aren't able to attend, we don't get readouts, we don't get notes from it. And so this would truly be a pre-disciplinary recommendation based on the ballpark of where it would land.
Just the facts in before.
Based on what's in the investigation. But I do think that there's a fair point of it is making a recommendation before the officer had, their opportunity to be heard in a disciplinary process. And so I think that whatever recommendation we would make would be very caveated by that. Like, we understand that there could be additional things. And then I think also what we are hoping to see is that the chief then makes a case for why they departed from that, right? Not to use the formal language of departing, but that, because XYZ factor was why they chose this discipline. And so I don't think we would be able to incorporate what happens in that hearing because we are not a party to it, which I think that it's fair to have some concerns about that.
Well, that was.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if we do a pre-disciplinary, then we cannot turn around and do a pub because now there is double jeopardy in that. We can't do it twice. So either you make a decision before and we have to stick with it, or we wait till the process and then we come up with a decision. But you can't do them both.
Madam Chairperson, before you answer that, may I suggest something to you that may make it a little smoother? You all may have thought about this already. The officers, the department goes to their pre-disciplinary, but before they issue a final recommendation, they bring that to us. So there's no final decision. They go through all their process using the pre-discipline mandatory proceeding held before finalizing the discipline, where the officers, the union reps, and counsel can respond to those allegations. But then, they will make a recommendation, but before it's final, bring it to us for our review, and then we can then decide right there based on the information that they have whether to adopt the recommendation, rescind the recommendation, or whatever our process is. And that prevents the long delay, and it eliminates double jeopardy. And it also allows the officer needs to be, on desk duty or something. They continue working, but they may be out, whatever the disciplinary process is. And then when we make our final decision, then that be the decision related to that recommendation from the pre-disciplinary recommendation, and that will protect the officer. That probably needs a little more work than that, but that's
Through the chair, ma'am. So my question was, and you kind of answered it, and actually to that point, Judge Nelson, there is no official record of the hearings.
What do you mean?
A disciplinary hearing. There's no there's no notes of it.
There should be transcripts, so you have it.
They'll transcribe all the hearings.
Can we?
But do we have access to those transcripts?
We have to request.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that the judge was talking about, what I kind of like is we had the safety director come here and explain why he made a decision on, I can't remember which case it was. But I almost think that it would be wise for them to come have send somebody from the charging officer or somebody from the command staff and explain if they deviated or why they made the decisions they did. If there's something that comes up at these hearings that we're not aware of at the time, that might, like you said, get us right on board right away. We'd have a good idea where the case went to and where it was going. And we could make a swifter decision, based upon whatever rationale they might have for putting out the discipline or not putting out discipline.
I'm gonna get you for that. So just to kind of, for me to understand, so what the suggestion is instead of doing this like pre-disciplinary recommendation review, we would do basically before the final discipline decision is given, we tell the chief that we want those basically decisions sent to us to approve prior to them implementing the discipline, correct? Is that kind of what?
I wouldn't say approve, I would say we review.
To review
And
make a
quite
recommendation?
often lately now, though, they've been putting a good rationale on why they are making decisions, because they know we're looking at things. So that might even be sufficient enough for us to, after we get the case right away, to review it and get the ball rolling on it. So like Commissioner Adams said, that it's not gonna take, 6 months before we send something up or, change something or revise something. I think it's like you said, it has to be kind of quick, is review right after they have their hearing and we look at it right away.
And
I
then-
just to
go
add
ahead.
that. So
And then Commissioner
we
Mason.
try to maybe address this in some of like the work, like the meetings that we've had with the chief and the work group meetings that we have, but I think they're a little resistant to it. We asked if perhaps we could get the records when the charge letter comes out, and the division's stance on that is that they feel like that's going to interfere with the ongoing investigation. We also inquired about if like somebody from the CPC could actually just be in the room for the disciplinary hearing, and then we could just hear it in real time. And so that was saying like that wasn't possible. And then the other challenge that, so I think this is we have to figure out who needs to sit down at the table with the people in the division or public safety department, because one of the things that the other part that we need is cooperation for us. Like, for example, there was an officer who had a disciplinary hearing on January 9th of 2026. And so we have to request those records because they weren't sent to us. So I think we have to figure out in some type of agreement with the division, the public safety department, some type of timeline where they'll get these disposition letters to us like more quickly. Because in this particular case, that officer has already had his hearing a couple months ago. And if we're gonna do something, now we're already waiting over 2 months for the record. So it's like there are levels of things I think that we need to try to work through so that we can meet the goals. I know that they're concerned about too much time between discipline. We're concerned about too much time between discipline, but there's got to be some type of collaboration with us so that we can try to time this as closely as possible. But we don't have full control over that process even on our end until we get all the records and everything that we need.
Commissioner Mason and then Commissioner Kincaid.
No, I was just gonna say, once we get the information, and I know just dealing with, when I had union and arbitration, and the arbitrator said our decision should never take more than 30 days, 45 at the max. So if we could stay within that timeline, then we will be working. I think we will be right on the time far as when the officer is disciplined, and we will be right on track without any confusion or mishap.
I have a question. This is another, this is all from my understanding, but I assume there are other people who may want to understand the same thing. Okay, so
We all know how traffic court works.
yeah, like you get a ticket, you know, this week between this date and this date, your court date will always be on this date. Everybody goes to court on the same day, type of thing. Does it work that way for this discipline, or is everybody's hearing an individual random
Day based on your case, so they are all individual. On a
They'll do multiple cases and like, you know, they'll do a lot of cases. They're typically, like a lot of them, I think they're Fridays.
okay.
So
So it's not like every Friday we're hearing cases 1 through 17 and we go, okay. So it is all relatively random. Okay. So when an officer receives, so the charge letters, that's how we find out that an officer has done something and is being brought up on these internal charges. That's how we find out. We get the charge letters.
And are you saying that those letters are not being sent to us in a timely enough fashion for us to then keep up with
I think
the
that
disciplinary hearing dates?
I think that the charge letters, they seem to be getting sent to us on time.
Okay.
But once they have, because the charge letter is going to announce the date for the actual hearing.
Okay.
And so it's, I'm thinking the challenge we're having is once the hearing is held, there's no consistent time frame under which we receive the discipline that they handed out. So that's what's not being done consistently, is that the time frame for when they could have the hearing and when they make their decision, and then when we get it, that's what's varying. So that's what sometimes is taking like months for us to get.
Also, when the case file, like we receive the charge letter and then we request the case file, what Dr. Adams is also saying is that there's variable time for how long it takes him to send us the case file. So I think one question for this thought exercise is, so we do this process, we get in on the front end, hopefully earlier in the process, and we make a recommendation. However, the commission does have final authority. So we would be essentially saying we kind of giving up because we couldn't then hear that case again during the evidentiary hearing. We couldn't do an evidentiary hearing for that same case is what I am understanding. So do we feel like it's worth giving up that, please, Executive Director?
So, to the chair, part of the reason why we're trying to get out on the front end, until all the gray areas are shored up or cleared up in the charter, one of them being the conflict between the CBA and the charter. So that's a huge issue right now. When we receive the final discipline and then request a case file, these case files are, not sometimes all in one place, and it could take a very long time. The CBA conflicts with anything after 6 months, right? So that already puts us in some kind of red zone where yes, we have final authority, but we're in conflict right now with the CBA. And until that is resolved, we're still, so if we can, have some kind of influence on the front end, we make our recommendation. Of course, they don't have to, they're going to go through the hearing and all that, and they'll make their own decision. But if we're going through it in real time with them, I think we have a greater chance of having a better impact and influence on the decisions that we like to see.
So it sounds like this is a process that we could utilize until, to see if this allows us to positively influence discipline in a way that hopefully would prevent the need for evidentiary hearings, but also doing this instead of evidentiary hearings until we resolve this conflict of the CBA and the charter. I saw Commissioner Kincaid, Commissioner Mason, did I see you? Okay, and then Commissioner Adams, and then is there anybody else who has comments? And then Commissioner Judge Nelson.
So, Internal Affairs does their investigation, right? So for them, they've already pulled all the necessary files to host an investigation, right? And so then the findings from that investigation are detailed. So do we need their file or do we need all of the case files? Like, are we not just taking the evidence from an investigation that's already been done? So if they have already done the groundwork and compile it for us, that's what we're reviewing, right? Or do we have to review every single, like, do we have to review all the evidence they review?
You know, we should probably just review their investigation.
So what's so difficult about getting that? If they've already compiled it, why can't they just give it to us? I mean, is this naive? I'm genuinely asking these questions. I'm very much confused as to why that would take so long.
I think the one,
Okay.
sometimes they're just, we have some questions also about why we're not getting files faster. The one specific reason they've given us is, so for example, to consider mitigating and aggravating factors, you might need their previous disciplinary history. And one thing we've run into is when requesting the discipline records of an officer, they sometimes tell us, well, that file, there is no one singular discipline record. It lives in different places. And so that's a specific reason that they've given us for it taking a long time. For some of the cases where they're older cases, they've said, well, this just doesn't exist anymore or was lost. But, most of the time it's some of the length that it has taken for us to receive case packages and case files. You're correct in that it doesn't really seem very logical.
Okay. Okay.
Dr. Adams, and then Judge Nelson, and then you were next.
I was gonna wait for your committee members to.
Oh, yeah, he didn't even know what it was.
Okay, Judge Nelson,
He's
and
just
then
being known.
As I listen to the conversation and review the process, the mandatory process that the department engages in, I would think that upon the conclusion of the mandatory process and the department's presentation, the department then presents their recommendation to us, the CPC Accountability Committee. The Accountability Committee will then either adopt with all of the supporting documentation that the department has used, will either adopt the recommendation and forward it to the full commission, or reject the recommendation and refer it to the and conduct an evidentiary hearing, which would include the mitigating and aggravating factors. That means that we will have when they come before us, just like the safety director did, they provide all the information relative to how they arrive at their recommendation. We then will hear that in our accountability committee. We'll have a chance to go do a deep dive with the director. Based upon that, we would then take his recommendation and convene in whatever our process, whether it's executive session, whatever process we utilize. We will then examine what they have before us. If we conclude that this is satisfactory for forwarding to the full commission, we forward it. If we believe that it is not satisfactory or we dispute it, then it can come before the full committee for an evidentiary hearing with all the supporting documentation that we can then, pursuant to the authority we've been granted, either as the information says, we will then, because the police commission has the authority to review and potentially alter the decisions, that will provide the consistency in terms of decision making, and and do it within a certain frame period. If it's 30 days, 45 days, we'll decide how soon that information has to be provided to us, so there won't be that lag. And we'll also have an opportunity to review the whole file if we have the commission dissents. That would be fair, it would be expeditious, and it wouldn't violate the spirit of the collective bargaining.
I appreciate that. Director Williams, and then Commissioner Chair.
And this is through the chair to Judge Nelson. So we're still requesting the case file.
Right.
Still requesting the case file, and we're also requesting that command staff or whomever they've designated to come before us and present that case. Do so. Okay.
and that's consistent with their professional review of the facts.
Mhm.
And then it doesn't violate any of the charter requirements nor the authority of the commission. It may save us some time. It may expedite the process, but in any event, it would be a thorough review. And if because we do have this final oversight, we just didn't agree, then we have an evidentiary hearing, and that decision would be the decision. Now, subject to whatever other appeals there are. But I know when the director came, he had all his ducks in a row, and there'd be no reason for them to not have their ducks in a row because it's both public. The hearing is public. Accountability hearings are public, and the review, and our discussion will be public. And there's always some, devil in the details, and those could be. We have a director, and they have department heads, and so some of those things can sort of be worked out.
Commissioner Chair, and then I have some comments, and then did I see you? Did you have something?
I always got something to say. Go.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Chair, and then I have some comments.
Just to get back with Commissioner Kincaid, IA should have everything. They should have tow sheets, they should have all the body cameras, they should have video from other houses, everything else. I mean, this thing about, they're presenting the criminal case, they should have everything. Radio transcripts, listening to the audio. When I was there, I would listen. There was one thing on a different channel, an officer made a comment when they had the use of deadly force incident, and it came back to haunt them. They might have been joking around, but I wasn't going to let anything slide by. When I was in charge of it, I would listen to just about everything. I might be doing some paperwork, but I'd be listening to the radio transmissions, see what was on there, and the phone calls and everything else. IA should have everything. They're the investigators. They're going to put the whole package together, so they should have everything we would need.
So why can't they put a bow on it and deliver it on Christmas?
I do not know. We had trouble with that before, so maybe we could, maybe this will work out.
Maybe I'll ask.
So just so that I want to make sure that I understand, I really like the recommendation of Judge Nelson. So what we would do is invite, once we have the case package given to us, after the disciplinary hearing is held, when the command staff has their disciplinary decision made, and they come to us and say, this is the details, this is, we have the case package that we can review, this is the discipline decision that we have reached, this is the rationale for it, this committee reviews it, and either says, and tries to, we would review it on a monthly basis, so that it's not holding up the process. And then if we vote to agree with the discipline decision that they've made, the committee votes, we approve it, it moves on. If at the point we disagree with the decision that they have not yet given down, but they're recommending, at that point, we would say we want to hold an evidentiary hearing on this. And then at that point, we would have to hear from the division whether their process is they're going to give that discipline, even though we don't agree with their recommendation. They could either choose to give the discipline, and then we are holding a hearing and telling them you need to change the discipline, or they could preemptively say, we will wait until you hold your evidentiary hearing, give your decision, and then they would make, they would do that decision. Am I understanding that correct? Am I explaining that? Is that what you're laying out?
Well, when I'm looking at the process, when we got the recommendation from when the director came over to us, we had documentation in front of us. We reviewed his document and we heard his presentation. Then we convened in our own meeting. And we had opportunity to review it, and we wanted to, we could have come back and said, well, there's some additional information we need. And we could continue that until we get this other information. Those details, I think, can be worked out between the director and the director. Then if it's not satisfied, it may be a simpler issue that's being, a less complex issue that's being discussed. Now, if there's another issue, such as the one we reviewed when we had to look at the videotapes and statements and all that, and then we can also, because we have the time, we just have to do it within a time frame, so we can be timely. But we do have the time, because our committee is flexible to actually look at what we need to look at in order to come to a more informed decision if we need to. But that can be worked out between the director and the directors. But it still allows information to move forward in a timely manner, even if it requires us to continue it, because there's something we may need in addition to come to a complete and intelligent decision about what's being presented to us.
I think so. At 6:30.
One other thing,
Go ahead.
and these things are not done in a vacuum. So I mean, it's not guesswork. So we actually would have some hard data to review. Okay, because they have to have something to review. And if we question and don't think what they presented is sufficient, we can always ask them to provide based on the fact that, like Jim says, it's a complete file. They have all the stuff. Okay.
Are you imagining that when the command staff comes to present their discipline recommendation, are you imagining that we also extend an invitation to the officer?
I hadn't thought that. I honestly had not thought that.
Yeah.
I have not written that down, but that may, I yield to police folks. Is that what you all do? And then, and further, I yield to the committee too, because they
You always hear what the officer said. You
Yeah.
gotta give him his opportunity to speak.
the due process.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I would think that'd be part of the process. Because we also invited the people before, they just didn't come. for some reason.
Mr. President, I've been told by CPRB, the officer hours never shows up at their event. Yeah.
But in regard to this, I guess now I'm a little confused because when we first started talking about this process, this was a pre-disciplinary process in total, right? And so if internal affairs has already done, again, I keep going back to the fact that our investigation, in a sense, we are also relying on internal affairs, just like the department, for the investigatory portion. I would think that will also include a statement from the officer. Whatever the officer has had to say, they have said it already. They don't need to come, in my opinion, they don't have to come and sit here and tell us. Internal affairs would have that. They would have the interview, they would have record of the transcripts, we can read it. So we know what the officer's point of view was. At that point, in my mind, again, being naive, this would be as simple as essentially internal affairs giving us the exact same presentation they would give to the department and allowing us to do our own independent review of the information they present so we can come up with it. Because what they're doing is coming up with a recommendation as well, pre-hearing. They say, this is what we've got. Now, what could come out in the hearing, they don't know either. But if it's something that will mitigate these facts that's right here, you know.
But now we're doing it after the hearing. Yeah. So we would also, what Judge Nelson is suggesting is that we have them come after the hearing. So we would also, to your point, have the transcript of the hearing and be able to ask the command staff questions about that.
Well, so I guess in my mind, if we make a recommendation based on internal affairs investigation and we say, okay, it should be this group 2, whatever, right? And internal affairs has also made the same recommendation. Then the hearing happens. I guess in my mind, the only reason that I would need the safety director or a representative of that department to come down and explain something to us is if they vacated the recommendations. Then at that point, I think before we decide to enact our authority to have an evidentiary hearing, that they should come down and explain to us pre-evidentiary hearing, why did you vacate the recommendation of both the CPC and internal affairs? What happened in that pre-disciplinary hearing that made you go that route? So then they would come and say, okay, well, so this is what happened, this is what review, blah, blah, blah. And then at that moment we can still say, oh, okay, I see that. we agree and move on. Or to Judge Nelson's point, we can say, no, we don't see that, we don't agree, and we're gonna now move this to, because the discipline has to already be administered for us to do our part, right? We have to be changing the discipline, so we still have to let it go through the full process.
No, ma'am, no, the Cleveland Police Department holds their mandatory pre-discipline. That's percent to the contract. They hold back.
Yes.
Now, usually they will make a decision, then we come back and review it. All right, and this sometimes one of the things that offended some of our sensibilities is the fact that we didn't get to it for 6 months. The person already been disciplined. We won't come back, undo it, or do some new discipline. This way, we eliminate that. They make their recommendation, present it to us, because we do have the authority pursuant to the charter to have the final say over this.
Okay.
So instead of waiting, they would present it to us. We would then either adopt it,
Right.
forward it to the full committee, our recommendation, reject it, or forward it for an evidentiary committee. And now at the other end, yes, the officer, there's nothing to prevent the officer from appearing.
Right.
We would not deny them their due process. If they wish to not come, that's fine. But we don't have to even consider whether they come or not.
Gotcha.
Because they would have the right to make their, if they, we may want to look them in the eye.
Right. Yeah.
We may be impressed by there's some, and that goes to those mitigating and aggravating factors.
So just for clarity, from a rules standpoint, from like what this is,
It is not required for the department to have already made a formal decision for us to turn it over and make. So to that point, which was our first case, I thought that the department had to have already charged someone with something, and then we can say we don't agree with what they were charged with, and now we want to adjust it. But it does not have to go through that. It doesn't have to be finalized for us to make a decision.
That is what our internal rules have laid out,
Okay.
but the charter does not specify.
When we can intervene.
Yes, it does. We would not be able to intervene with CPRB
Correct.
until that has moved through their process,
Their process.
because they have their own rights under the charter that we don't like. So I don't think we could intervene before they've made decisions, but with the division, I didn't, like, somebody could check the charter, but my understanding is the charter just says we have final authority over discipline. And so what we would be doing is changing our own internal evidentiary hearing process
gotcha.
to say what we are going to do is, instead of waiting until discipline decisions have already been made and reviewing them, we are requesting that the division come to us after the pre-disciplinary hearing, we review the case file. The command staff has the ability to say, this is the discipline that we are recommending based on all of the investigation and on the results of the pre-disciplinary process. This committee would then say, we agree with the recommendation, and we are just sending that recommendation to the full commission for final approval, or saying we disagree with that recommendation, and therefore we are sending to the full commission the request to have a disciplinary hearing. And then we would follow our timeline, and we might need to shorten those timelines in order to ensure that we are
Not impeding.
not impeding the discipline process, that we would then hold an evidentiary hearing. And so that is kind of how I think the process, so it would be less of the accountability committee creating its own process and more saying, hey, this is what we're recommending for this entire process that integrates the evidentiary hearing process into the discipline process, and hopefully then gets rid of that conflict between the CBA and the charter.
So how do we formalize and present this to the department? Like, what's that process like?
So what I was going to recommend is that what I do is, based on our discussion today, I write up a new draft process and then send it to all of us here so that we can, and in our next meeting, discuss it, review it, because we have time, because we can't really start getting to this until we have and it's, yeah, the staff. We discuss it, make changes, make edits. At that point, then I would want us to get with the rules committee to go over, to go over, yeah, basically integrating this draft process. How do we update the evidentiary hearing rules to do that? And then at that point, hopefully bring it back to this committee, bring it to the full commission. And then we could either decide we want to pass it through the full commission and then go to the division and say, hey, we passed this, or we could start conversations now, even before it even goes to rules, or after we go to rules and say, hey, we're considering this process. Do you have any feedback, and see if they want to collaborate with us? So there's a kind of some questions of strategy that I would definitely be open to what people think.
And through the chair, I would say, let's talk to the division. I think they would be open. I had a brief conversation with D.C. Slot, and they seemed, and even Chief Thomas, and they seemed open to it. They seemed like this, the way that it is currently has just been a historical process that probably needs some updating.
I'm sorry, you go ahead. You go. Okay. What I was going to do, this is not a motion because I think it needs more discussion. I'm going to write up what I've said as a recommendation for us to consider.
Great.
At the, and maybe for this to the director and to the chair. I'll write it, give it to you, and then, because you can't read this, I can't read it. And then you can, discuss it. It's a basis of discussion. Okay. So to ferret out some of the objections that may come up, smooth out some of the language that is in it, and then you can sort of wordsmith it. But instead, it won't be a motion. Because I want to read it into the record, but not as a motion. Okay.
Go ahead. Oh.
And I read it in the record already. So.
What do you think? You're gonna draft it up, send it to Director Williams, and then we can discuss it in our next meeting.
I'm actually going to give it to her. She's going to say it.
Great. So then, yeah, and I can also support in whatever would be helpful, and then we can have a more formalized version ready for discussion for next month. Commissioner Chur and then Commissioner Mason. Okay.
Why don't we just shake everything up? When they have the division as a hearing, that they record it, and they could give it to us a day or two later. We could look at everything that was presented, who was there, what was presented, who said what, instead of looking at transcripts or anything like that. And then we'd all be on the same page. We see the same thing that the chief saw and everybody else saw, what the officer had to say, what is, everything that's mitigating, aggravating. And then we could just look at that. Don't have to come down here unless we really had some other questions or something, but pretty much we'd be looking at it the same way the chief is.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It'd be even easier if you let us go.
But no, that would never happen.
Okay. I ain't gonna say nothing.
No. They don't even work on certain groups sitting in
And
there
I'm just
here.
sitting there
So,
Commissioner Mason.
I think I had talked to Chur about if one time we need to make sure that we have some open communication with the FOP. And we definitely gotta have a sit down with the chief so that this ain't gonna work unless we get the buy-in to them. And that when I say buy-in, I mean signatures. It's like a contract, like a union contract. Everybody gotta sign on that dotted line. So I think that once we iron out all that pieces, that's when we gotta sit down. But we gotta open up some communications with these two entities. If we don't, this is not gonna work.
Because they'll have feedback, pushback, or recommendations, I'm sure.
But you may be surprised. I think the biggest piece is they think that we don't want to work with them, and we continue to say they don't want to work with us.
Right.
And so we are constantly back and forth with each other. And we have not had a conversation with them as a group.
As a group, right?
I was gonna say, I think we had talked about this some time ago about possibly creating a communication where maybe we can get some type of MOU in place where we sort of kind of agree on a process where we can kind of streamline this kind of together. I just think it's really important because I really think that it's not fair to the officers to have so much time in between when these decisions are going to be made. And I think that if they know that I would hope that they know we're coming from a sincere place where we really want to do the right thing by these officers and treat them fairly. Like hopefully, we can get some buy-in or we can come to an agreement, but unless we're going to have some type of system that, we hold ourselves to where we have to get these things in a timely fashion, like if we can't get their findings and like what they use to make their findings in a timely fashion, then it's just not going to work.
We got to structure some type of
Yeah,
operation.
so we have to agree to something.
I think that'll happen though with staffing.
Yeah.
The application of proper operations requires people to operate in it, if that makes sense. So it's like once we know what our process is, I think it'll be even easier for us to make the requests we need to make, hold people accountable for them, even if it is set up on a schedule. Like I'm just hypothetically, because Jocelyn is our staffer right now. It's like if Jocelyn was the person that's like, okay, every Friday, make sure you send that email to whoever it needs to be sent to follow up on requests. Because, we had this conversation before as it related to different request issues that we have been having. And again, to risk sounding naive, I always think about things in terms of like being what do you call it? Like a gnat at a barbecue. It's like if I know that I have a records request and I make my records request formally, and then I make a phone call and follow up on that records request. And then a week later, when I still don't have it, I send another formal email. And it's all just due diligence, right, on the part of the person who needs the information, so that when it isn't given to us, it's like, well, you knew what I needed, and I asked you 5 times, and it's all right here. And it's nothing personal. There's no feelings involved. This is just, hey, just following up on that records request from XYZ date. But that's a level of accountability. And once we have staff in place that can do that consistently, where we're not the people doing it.
But right now, we do have an agreement in place. So we do have a court order agreement where the way that it works is supposed to work. And this is part of, why we're still having challenges because, for a lot of reasons, the timelines are not being met. So the way that the process should work is we would make a records request, and then the city would have 7 days to ask for clarification on the request, or there have been times they've asked for like a continuance, but they have 7 days to voice any like opposition or questions, clarity. And then once that's done, so if they did that, then we then get 7 days to respond to whatever their concerns or their opposition was. But in the end, once that's done, there's supposed to be 21 days that they have to give us records. And so there is an agreement in place. We just haven't been holding everyone accountable to it, or we haven't been getting records in that time frame. But that is what we do have in place in this court order by Judge Oliver.
In regard to this process, as we're talking through it, if we were to say as a part of the process that when Internal Affairs submits their findings to the department, they simultaneously submit them to us, is that because are they submitting a file or are they making a presentation? Because there's a difference, right? Or they compile everything, they put it in writing. This is what we reviewed. Here it is, and on the top of the stack is everything we reviewed in a summary and our recommendation. Here it is for your review. Or is it literally a presentation of evidence? Like, are they making a case?
They put together a report.
They put together a report. When they put together that report, what's keeping them from sharing said report with them and with us?
I think that what we can do is
As a part of this process.
I think what we can do is when when we put together this larger proposal and as we talk to the division, to hammer out details, I think we can include a section on records and how we receive them and what gets requested so that it is standardized. I think that I feel like we're in a really good place of kind of next steps. And I also just want to echo what Commissioner Mason said, which is that you're absolutely right that like the earlier we can collaborate with the division, the more likely we are to get buy-in, and this process will only truly run smoothly if we have buy-in, if we're all on the same page. And so I think that, you know, what I would love to have Director Williams do is maybe just to kind of like notify the division that we are having some conversations about this, and that after we kind of hammer out a process internally or a draft, that we would love to sit down with them. And I think at our next meeting, we can go over what our draft is, further refine it, answer additional questions. And then I think that we can also talk about who we want from the committee to work with Director Williams to sit down with the division to have conversations.
So to the chair, so what I will say is we do have monthly meetings scheduled with the chief. I think it's the fourth Thursday, so that we usually meet with the chief the day after our full commission meetings. So there is a place on the calendar that we have. So I just want to just put that out there that we can, you know, let them know, because a lot of times before we have the meeting, they'll ask for like an agenda items or things that, you know, we want to discuss in the meeting. So I just want to just put it out there.
Would a representative from our committee be able to attend that meeting?
I think we can ask Chief Todd, but I don't know what she will say, but I don't know why she would be opposed to having a person from the.
Yeah, we can certainly have, you know.
Well, per her
Jeopardy.
conversation today, she said she is open for conversation. She was at the women's symposium, and she and I talked for about 15 minutes.
That's great.
So she said she was open. So,
So we can do that. We can have somebody from the committee.
Does everyone feel good about that plan for moving forward? Okay, I thought this was a great meeting. Thank you for everybody for such a great discussion, and I look forward to supporting Director Williams. They're gonna take what Judge Nelson is putting together to write up a formal process. I can offer any support, and we'll get that sent out as far in advance of the next meeting as possible so that people can review it and think about it, and then we will finalize that discussion. Our next meeting will be Monday, April 13th at 5:30 p.m. Any final questions?
but True, you're gonna talk to FOP and see about them if they are willing to sit down with us.
Sure.
Because we need that bridge gap right there. We need to solidify, at least they know that we're not way out there.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Awesome. Any final comments, questions?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
And it's really more of a hierarchy in terms of who so will we be meeting with these with the groups via our executive director, maybe accompanied by a board member, but the executive director that could lead the conversations? Is that the proper way of
I think it depends. Different committees handle different things differently. So for example, on the policy committee, myself and Pete meet directly with DC Schlott and other members of the policy division. There have been other times that the executive director will go meet on behalf of the commission with a member of the division. But what I was imagining is, apart from just notifying them that we are working on something around this and want to collaborate with them, I don't think we need to make there's been no decisions made about who and like how that process will happen, and we can discuss that next month. But I'm certainly open to any and all approaches.
I'll defer any further discussion to the next month's meeting. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. There's no members of the public, so we will skip public comment and we will end this meeting. Thank you so much.